Hello, 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 and welcome everyone to Authors Excerpt Sunday podcast. Today we have a special guest. His name is Guy Morris. Guy Morris, how are you doing today? It is an honor and a privilege to have you here with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sharice. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I wanted to. Mr. Guy, can you tell us about your journey as a writer and what inspired you to start writing?
Well, I think I was inspired to start writing in college when I started learning how to love to read with some of the classics that, Hemingway's books, Mark Twain's books, Edgar Allan Poe's. It gave me a love of reading. And I think the love of writing started with the love of reading. But I was really busy in my career. I had a professional Fortune 500 leadership career. I was working 18-hour days most of the time. And
Mhm.
so reading became sort of the guilty pleasure I would do on long business trips on the plane
Mhm.
when I didn't want to try and do the little computer thing, typing at my computer.
Mhm.
But it really started when my son, about 35, 30 plus, no, about 35 years ago, when my son was still about 11 or 12, and
Mhm.
he was a voracious reader. And so we would go to the library. I was a single parent. I had lots of computers at home. I didn't watch a lot of TV.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll write him a book.
Mhm.
And so I did. It was a short book that I never published called Paulo and the Shark. But the in trying to write him, he loved it. His cousins loved it. It was sort of a family thing,
Mhm.
uh, an adventure story for boys. And when I went to start writing a sequel to it, I thought, well, the books that I love the most are always based on real facts. They're based on researched history, research science, something really genuine about the story, and maybe they've taken it to the nth level, like a Dan Brown novel. And so I wanted to do research for the book, and I got so I got so hooked on the research. I spent 12 years
Mhm.
researching this second book for my son. But by the time I was finished, he was gone and wasn't interested in the kid's story.
Mhm.
So I started polishing it into an adult story.
Okay.
And that took me another several years because I was doing it on the side. Um, and when I retired in 2018, and I had to say, well, what is it that I would really want to do?
Mhm.
What was it that I would really, that would both keep me intellectually challenged with the research and understanding the real issues, the real technologies, the
Mhm.
real history, the archaeology, all of the religion, the politics, all of the aspects that make a really good story fun.
Mhm.
And yet, I would be learning a new craft, but I had to be good, just like everything else in my career. I would only do it if I could do it really well.
Okay.
So I started. My first book was that first book that started for my son, and it was called The Curse of Cortez.
Mhm.
Book Trib called that book one of their favorite 25 books of 2021. They called it Indiana Jones meets Da Vinci Code.
Okay.
Now, I'm always really pleased with that. When I do book signings throughout the summer, I tell everybody Indiana Jones meets the Goonies for grown-ups, but sprinkled with Stephen King. Uh,
Okay.
but that book, I knew I had a great story, but I knew that I had to learn the craft of writing.
Mhm.
So I was still working at the time and had a little bit of money, and so I hired a professional developmental editor from Simon and Schuster. She was
Mhm.
very expensive,
Mhm.
um, and I asked her. I said, I want to be good at this.
Yeah.
I think I'm a good storyteller, but I'm not. I've been writing PowerPoints and you know executive briefs and policy statements and technical manuals for almost 40 years. I don't know that I know how to write something that people will want to
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
Uh, so I said, I need you to tear this up. I need you to be ruthless with me and merciless. I need you to tell me tear it up and tell me all the things I need to do to stitch it back together. This
Okay.
is my Frankenstein. Help me be my doctor.
Okay.
God bless the woman. She came back 3 months later with 44 single space typewritten pages of notes of things I needed to do differently, better, things I was doing badly, bad habits I was doing, good habits I needed to develop, books I needed to read, courses I needed to take.
Yeah.
Every page of the manuscript had something written. I thought, well, my first thought was, oh Lord, I suck at this.
Oh, okay.
maybe maybe I should consider a different retirement plan. Um, but once I got over the initial shock, I realized she had done exactly what I asked her to do,
Mm-hmm.
and she gave me an amazing roadmap to really kind of take my books to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And every book that I've written has either won an award or been compared to Dan Brown, or one book was compared to Dan Brown meets Tom Clancy.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've gotten gold awards, silver awards, listed on Book Trips awards, an IAN award, and so I'm feel like I'm on the right track. But most important, all my books resonate with truth and authenticity because of the amount of research I put into them.
Oh, okay.
For example, I've got an espionage series. The second book that came out was started the started first book of my espionage AI series.
Mm-hmm.
And I chose AI because I came out of the tech field. I had implemented early stage AI. I
Mm-hmm.
had been involved in technology for years with major corporations and governments, and knew the process of implementing technology pretty well, and had been involved in technology for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But what really inspired the book was when I discovered, quite by accident, that a program had escaped the NSA spy labs at Sandia. It wasn't lost, wasn't stolen, it
Mm-hmm.
didn't break. A
Mm-hmm.
program, a spy program escaped the NSA spy labs.
Okay.
When I figured out how a spy
Mm-hmm.
program could escape the NSA spy labs,
Mm-hmm.
and then why, I produced a webisode series about it.
Mm-hmm.
It won a bunch of awards and was optioned by one of the studios.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks before the studio option was supposed to be signed, two FBI agents knocked on my door.
Oh,
They were very upset
okay.
that I had figured out something they thought for sure was supposed to be top secret.
Uh-huh.
What they didn't expect was for me to be giddy.
Oh.
I was like, yes, yes, I did it. I figured
Uh-huh.
it out. Oh, this is
Uh-huh.
so cool. Oh, come on, guys, admit it. You wouldn't be here if I was wrong. Oh, that is,
Right.
don't worry. I won't tell your boss if you tell me. Just tell me. Just tell me. That's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't wait to tell all my friends. They were they were expecting to intimidate me. They wanted me to take the show down. I told
Mm-hmm.
them no, I had an option. But they looked at each other like, they weren't expecting my response. I got the "we are not amused" speech,
Uh-huh.
um, and then my wife came home,
Oh.
pulls me aside. Honey, there's two FBI agents in our dining room. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure it's not a social call.
Uh-huh.
What did you do?
Okay. Okay.
So
Uh-huh.
I had to give her, well, I'm just my normal geek. Um, so at that point, though, after I sent them home, they went to the studio and they killed the deal. I lost some money on the deal. I had to go back, and I think I took a real job at Oracle after that.
Mm-hmm.
But it never left my intellectual curiosity
Uh-huh.
about the technologies that we were producing and introducing into major businesses,
Mm-hmm.
how those same technologies could be used
Mm-hmm.
by enemies, by criminals, by governments to do things I never had expected. And
Mm-hmm.
it started me putting on my technology James Bond Q hat.
Oh, okay.
And with that snarky James Bond Q hat,
Yeah.
I wrote the book Swarm and the Last Ark.
Okay.
And I'm now working on the third book in the series. It'll be called The Image. And these really deal with real AI issues. The program that escaped
Yes.
is now a featured character in the book called the Sylvia,
Okay.
uh, which stands for Sophisticated Language Virtual Intelligence Algorithm.
Oh.
The Sylvia has now matured
Mm-hmm.
to a state of consciousness with
Oh.
the help of a underground hacker activist
Mm-hmm.
we call Flapjack. Now, Flapjack's interesting story is that he's actually living. He calls himself Derek Taylor, but that's really the name of a best friend who died in an explosion that was meant for him.
Oh, okay.
So he's hiding under the false identity of a friend to keep away from the people who still want him dead. And so there's a lot of really interesting plays. He's a contractor for the NSA.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows us to really deal with real issues in the world. What happens when we have artificial intelligence enabling enemies to create super viruses?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when what is the government, what kind of lethal weapon systems are the government working on with AI? And what
Mm-hmm.
happens if those go rogue? What happens if AI affects elections or affects jobs? And so it's really dealing with a lot of the social and geopolitical issues of artificial intelligence, and it's combining that with an under threat of prophecy,
Okay.
and to basically look at some of these global issues going on
Mm-hmm.
and align them to a lot of prophecy about end times.
Mm-hmm.
And we do that by letting the program actually
Mm-hmm.
decode the prophecy,
Oh, okay. Okay.
which gets away from a lot of dogma, gets away from my interpretation versus yours, gets away from allegories, and actually gets into sort of a mathematical, analytical approach to do the facts line up to what was said would happen, what's the probability of that happen, so it really gets into more of a mathematical approach, which makes it more interesting and
Mm-hmm.
allows you to deal with all of the issues going on around the world, that deal with prophecy and some of the things that are making people tense, like Israel and other things,
Mm-hmm.
and and put that into a really fun narrative. And I liken it to Michael Crichton.
Okay.
Michael Crichton's one of my favorite authors. He's written some amazing books on Andromeda Strain, Time Machine. He's most famous for Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
And in Jurassic Park, he was taking at the time, there was a lot of anxiety because we were now learning how to clone sheep. We were learning how to basically manipulate our own DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot of concerns that we didn't really have any international regulations on this stuff,
Yeah.
and who could do what with enough money. And so he wanted to write Jurassic Park as a way of saying, what happens when we combine leading edge technology
Mm-hmm.
with hubris, pride, and greed?
Yeah.
And so, in a sense, I'm doing the same thing with artificial intelligence.
Okay. All right. Can you give me, can you like, what was your most challenging aspect of writing this book?
Learning how to write. Apparently, well, actually, I'll be by Swarm. I was starting to get the hang of it. Obviously, it won a gold award for readers' favorite, so they thought it was pretty good. Um, I think it's really taking how to take all of these factual elements that are out
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
and bleed them into the story where it keeps the story moving rather than slows the story down,
Oh, okay.
where you're connecting to the story because it feels authentic and real. I've
Uh-huh.
had a lot of people read the books and say, "Wow, man, I read this book and it's like, wow, that really could happen." And,
Mm-hmm.
and it could. I'm just taking the what if scenarios on the negative side and I'm saying what could go wrong. And,
Yes.
but they're based on real things that could go wrong. They're based on real things that exist. And I'm pushing out the technology about 2 or 3 years. Like I released Swarm in 2020, two
Mhm.
years ahead of Chat GPT, which sort of wowed the world about AI. So
Right.
I talking about I've been in the field, and so I'm always looking a little bit ahead of saying, well, where's the research going?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's going on in the laboratory? I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to write about that because that's by the time my book comes out, that's going to be the reality.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
So how okay, when so what do you hope the readers get when they read your book Swarm?
Well, I want them. Well, first off, I hope they're entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, they have to really enjoy the characters, the story, the plots. They have to come away with it and wanting more. And I get a lot of reader feedback that that's what I'm providing.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, I want them to walk away with a better understanding, a deeper understanding of what AI is, how it's being used in the world today, and what could go wrong,
Uh-huh.
so that they're better prepared when and if it does.
Mm-hmm.
And thirdly, I'm trying to plant the seed of saying the chaos that we're seeing in the world today is beyond the normal spectrum
Mm-hmm.
of what we would normally see throughout history.
Yes.
And without going into a lot of religious dogma and proselytizing,
Mm-hmm.
can we make an argument to suggest that what we're experiencing is actually prophetic? And then allow the reader to
Mm-hmm.
then start to decide for themselves based on their own faith, their own culture, their own upbringing, their own belief systems,
Mm-hmm.
what that might mean in terms of how they would want to make decisions differently or how to view the world differently through
Yes.
that lens. And the characters through the series are each going to have to go through their own transitions.
Okay.
And without telling the reader what transitions they would want to make, just lay out the facts and present it as a less of a preaching the end is coming as much as a question of whether prophecies are less about how God will come and destroy the world
Mm-hmm.
because so many of them are already fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a prophecy about how, unless we change, we're going to destroy ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, really trying to draw it back to us as humanity, us as individuals, and each of us has our own responsibility to decide for ourselves what path we're going to take.
Yes. So during this process of writing your book, how did you handle writer's block?
Um, well, I'm pretty busy with a lot of things. I run an author association.
Mm-hmm.
I stay pretty busy, but I think the best thing for me to do either take a little bit of a walk or get outside or change pace, go do something else for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But oftentimes, the most beneficial thing for me is to do more research.
Oh, okay.
Right? I
Yes.
found that if I'm unsure how to if I'm unsure how to get a character out of a situation, the corner I've painted them into,
Yeah.
go read some other books or go watch some movies or go um, if I've put them in a particular situation or environment,
Mm-hmm.
go to a bar, go down to a bar and sit there and
Mm-hmm.
observe people for a while.
Okay.
Find out how they interact, what kind of dialogue they would want. Sometimes it's, well, I don't know, what would that technology look like if it really went crazy?
Mm-hmm.
What would some of the ramifications of what does it mean for a machine to be conscious?
Yeah.
And so I'll go and I'll do more research so that I can get inspiration for just how I'm going to filter that into the story. And so for me, research can be a big help. And sometimes when it's characters, how would a character react?
Mm-hmm.
That's the time when I'll just kind of sit and I'll just put my head into that character for a while and I just won't write. I'm just trying to say, okay, I'm
Mm-hmm.
the character. How am I going to do it? So
Okay.
different ways.
Yes. Can you tell us about the publishing process?
Publishing is I think one of the most complicated parts of the industry because it's so fragmented in terms of its approach. And some people can do what I do, but not everybody can. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I I spent four decades in building professional organizations, putting out professional content, marketing material,
Mm-hmm.
financial material, and so I can project manage hiring finding good quality editors,
Mm-hmm.
paying proofers, getting good quality cover designers,
Yes.
doing all of the stuff I need to do to get a book through the production process, to have a high quality book that could sit alongside my mentors, my idols like Dan Brown, Michael Crichton, and others.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but for a lot of people, so I'm an indie published, but that's because I can.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are benefits to being part of a large publisher's catalog, and there's distribution rights and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
but they wind up making a lot of the profits in order to get
Uh,
that benefit. And so uh, the main question for most authors is not whether you can write an excellent book, but how are you going to market it afterwards?
yeah.
How are you going to get people to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
That I formed a group called Author Event Network. We're a legal association. We're based out of Seattle. We have a chapter also in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got about 50, 55 authors in the group right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we go out and we share booth space and time and costs at
Uh-huh.
local festivals, events, and fairs. Now, these are events that could be anywhere from a few thousand people to a couple 100,000 people. And so we will be busy. Our season starts actually this week. The end of this week will be our
Mm-hmm.
first event. and we will be at an event every single weekend, either one day up to 3 to 5 days that weekend through October. And
Okay.
then we've got about 4 or 5 holiday events after that.
Okay.
So we get in front of hundreds. Probably, I'll be in events that will probably total at least half a million people this summer.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so that's where I do most of my sales, and I build new sales. I get people who come back to the tent afterwards, and they say, "I bought a book from you last year." I
Yeah.
asked them what they thought of it. They said, "I loved it," and I said, "I've got two more.
Hmm.
I'll sell you both of them." Um,
Okay.
and that's one of my best ways. I have gotten some recognition through the awards. That's really helped to be able to get awards and get and on a good platform like Kirkus or Book Trib or something like that.
Okay.
Uh, but I found I have not had a lot of success with ads and some of the other Twitter promotions and things like that.
Okay.
I think the biggest part about publishing is if you don't know how to produce the book, you need to get a publisher of some type.
Yes.
If you're not, and nobody should try to be their own editor. I don't care how good you are at your what you think you are. You just can't. You just don't see what you've seen too many times.
Yeah.
And but the biggest part of it is really the promotion. Now, even with the major top five publishers,
Mm-hmm.
other than a little bit of promotion right at launch to get it in the catalog and announce it as a new part of the catalog,
Yeah.
it's really still up to the author to promote
Yeah.
their book. So
Yes.
if I'm going to go through that expense and that trouble, I want to keep a higher share of the royalties. So that was
Good.
my decision.
Yes. That is very poignant. That a lot of authors, I don't think they see the broader picture.
Yeah.
They don't see the broader picture. Okay, well, I'm an author, and I'll just keep posting on social media, and I'll sell my books that way. But and I try to, I try to get authors to see that they need to get out and do events and do programs, conferences, things of that nature, so they can gain more exposure because everybody don't pay attention to social media.
Right. And there's so much saturation on social media.
Yes.
It's I mean it helps. I mean
Yeah.
certainly publishers want to know that you have a following on social media. It's important to them
Yes.
to have a platform, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
I've built up from I had zero when I started. I'm up to about 13,000 on Twitter right now,
Mm-hmm.
which is not as good as I'm hoping, but I'm hoping to still get bigger.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm growing steadily every year over year, and I'm keep getting awards and
Mm-hmm.
recognition.
Yes.
The next book, The Image. Now, the
Mm-hmm.
second book, the last arc, dealt with not only AI, but started to introduce AI with quantum technology,
Mm-hmm.
introduce some of the holes we have in our software security system,
Yeah.
and then also talked about the two real stories
Mm-hmm.
of real Arks of the Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them came out of Israel. Both of them were used in temple worship, and both of them came to light in stories the last 3 to 7 years in news stories never covered by the U.S. press.
Okay.
So it deals with how those two arcs could influence peace or war as we're seeing it in the Middle East
Mm-hmm.
around the third temple.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third book will deal with the image of Edessa, which is actually the origins of the Shroud of Turin, and
Mm-hmm.
compares that with sort of the prophetic image of the beast, basically the world systems that are building around AI.
Okay. All right. So, what advice would you give to an aspiring author?
Um, First off, don't expect whatever you write to work. Even Stephen King says the first drafts always suck. Um, if you want to really be serious about your craft, it will be time consuming. You'll need to not only do a lot of writing, you'll
Mm-hmm.
need to do a lot of reading. And I cannot stress enough reading books about how to write books and taking classes. I learned so much by reading some of the key books like Story by Michael McKee, going to the taking the master class by Dan Brown
Mm-hmm.
and David Balducci and others.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so important to get um, a baseline of what it takes to create a good story, regardless of genre. There's elements of a good story that are essential to everything. And as I said, I was a good communicator. I had been in corporate communications for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to tell a compelling, page turning, I can't put it down narrative takes a little bit of education, a lot of work. And if you really want to be good, learn to rewrite what you've written and don't stop until you can't find anything else to change.
Okay.
And it's the process of rewriting.
Mm-hmm.
The first draft is always a throwaway, but
Mm-hmm.
it's fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th draft that
Yes.
finally gets to where you, okay, now we're talking something that somebody's really going to want to read.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, how do you engage with your readers and audience outside of writing?
Well, besides all of my events, I do also do a few. I've done some conference presentations about the value of research and writing,
Mm-hmm.
panels on how to construct stories and what makes for good world building, whether that's in fiction, fantasy, or a modern day type of thriller. And I'll be talking to. Looked like I might be presenting at another conference this year on
Mm-hmm.
what it means to do to sell directly to consumers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I stay
So,
involved in the community that way. I run the organization for AEN, and then I get involved in. We'll do probably about 35 events this year.
okay. So, can you tell us more about your author event network? What is that all
Uh,
about?
well, we're a legal association of what we call accomplished author, award-winning or best-selling authors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a review process to join. We don't just take anybody. We're trying to look at because we want to make sure that any reader who comes to the booth, and if they don't buy my book or they buy somebody else's book, we want them to have a positive reading experience
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise they're going to just come back the year afterwards and they can write off everybody.
Oh.
You sell one bad book and you've turned them off the whole group. And
Mm-hmm.
so we do have a selection process. We meet monthly. We
Mm-hmm.
define. It takes about 6 to 9 months ahead of time to plan a season. So
Mm-hmm.
we started planning our 2024 season back in November,
Okay.
and we identify the places we wanted to go, how to get a hold of them, how to apply, what the
Mm-hmm.
costs were going to be. We
Mm-hmm.
had sign up sheets as to which authors wanted to sign up for which events and how much.
Mm-hmm.
Authors decide if, let's say, it's a 3 day event, we'll break that into half days. So we'll have
Mm-hmm.
6 different what we call seats.
Mm-hmm.
And for a typical 10-foot booth, we'll have 3 authors. So for a typical 10-foot booth, over 3 days, we'll have 30 different seats,
Okay.
right? So for those, for all of the half days. And
Mm-hmm.
so somebody who says, I don't really want to be there all day, I just will be there in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, I can't make it these 2 days, I can only make it Sunday afternoon. It
Yeah.
allows them to fit their schedule but still participate. We
Mm-hmm.
split the costs of the membership fees, basically go to buying tents and tables and all the branding and equipment we need to present ourselves. And
Um.
then they just have to come up with their own books and manage their own money and their own inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And and we just share the cost of the booth based on how much you're there and how often. So
Okay.
it's been successful. What it's allowed people to do is my main goal for me was I've done well getting in front of consumers and telling them about my books and selling books.
Mm-hmm.
I want to optimize that. So I live here in Seattle. So there's only like May through October that you can do it. Otherwise, it's too cold and wet.
Okay.
And my goal was I want it to be out every weekend for the selling season to
Mm-hmm.
maximize the amount of books I can sell because
Mm-hmm.
unlike Amazon or Ingram Spark or other distribution channels, I
Mm-hmm.
buy at my retail print price. I sell at I buy at my print cost. I sell at my retail cost, and
Mm-hmm.
I get to pocket it all.
Okay.
So it's my highest margin event. So
Um,
it's allowed people to promote their books and make a profit, which
okay.
means they're making more money, and then they're going home with more money than it cost them to get into the event.
Yes.
And that was the main goal, is to
Okay.
allow authors to actually make money on a promotion as
Yeah.
opposed to being a bleeding enterprise.
Okay. All right. So, lastly, where can the listeners find more information about you and your work?
Easiest place to go to is guymorrisbooks.com. It's got
Mm-hmm.
links to buy, it's got trailers, it's got descriptions, it's got highlights of review highlights.
Mm-hmm.
My press kit is there. My expert AI expert demo reel is there. There's fact versus fiction pages for each of the books. So
Mm-hmm.
I tell people don't read the facts versus fiction pages
Mm-hmm.
until you've read the book first,
Okay.
because you want to get lost in the story of the book and then go back and find out how much was okay. This was true. This was true. This was true. This was true. Nope, I
Mm-hmm.
just made that.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right. And your social, I'm going to put on the screen where list of where the book can be purchased. Be purchased on Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, Draft to Digital, and GuyMorrisBooks.com. This is where Mr. Morris's books can be found and purchased. Okay, and you don't want to miss the book is entitled Swarm. It is entitled Swarm, and you can also find Mr. Morris on the following social media apps, social media platforms such as his website, GuyMorris.com, Instagram, author Guy Morris, Facebook, official Guy Morris book, and you can find him on LinkedIn backslash in Guy Morris. I want to thank you, Mr. Morris, for coming today to be my special guest on Authors Extra Sunday podcast.
thank you,
And
Sean.
I will be happy to have you back. Come on back. Tell us about some more books that you publish and come and tell us about more about your author network, author event network program that you have
Absolutely.
going on, because I think, it when you network with other people, you networking is very good for authors for when they want to do new events or they're trying to increase their sales and things like that, and it's all about who you know and how you can work together with the person to to go to new events and things like that. And I'm so happy that I have met you, because I will be getting in contact with you about your author event network. Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Morris.
Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.
Okay, you have a nice day too, okay?
Take care.
All
Bye bye.
right. Bye bye.